Over to you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Uncle Gerard. This issue about the term limits and the debate that has now ensued, including the debate today, has been caused by Zanu PF itself. It is the Zanu PF people, through their ministers, who have now talked about the possibility of the third term for President Mnangagwa. Earlier on, President Mnangagwa himself had said in an unrelated conversation that 2013 and Chipo. But ever since that, we have seen the Youth League falling over each other, advocating for the third term for the president. We have seen the various provinces in Zimbabwe talking about that as well. And today they had this Munumutapa Day. And the significance of the Munumutapa Day is that Munumutapa was a king. And what it seems to imply is that the president himself is being poised to be a king with unlimited terms of office. Of course, we have also had Zanu PF experts, Zanu PF related experts, saying that it's possible. Fortunately, the issue of the term limits was one of the most important things in the 2013 constitution making process. And I'm happy to say I was one of the people who were involved in the drafting. But particularly more important is that I was one of the people who were very passionate about limiting the presidential terms as well as the terms of other important national figures. Now, in terms of the Constitution, we have Section 91 and then we have Section 328. In terms of the law, and I'll just summarize it here. In terms of the law, if you want, in terms of the law, you cannot extend a presidential term limit, but should you want to extend the presidential term limit, you must amend the section which provides for term limits. And in amending that section, you must amend it in the way that you amend the Bill of Rights. Now, in terms of the Constitution, you can only amend the Bill of Rights via a referendum. So what the proponents have to do is then to arrange for a referendum, a yes or no referendum, with one question, and the question is whether or not the presidential term should be extended. It ends there. And the people will vote yes or no by simple majority, but it has to be a presidential a referendum. Then there is another section, subsection in 328, which says, even if the referendum question succeeds and there is a yes vote and the presidential term is extended, that extension shall not benefit the incumbent. So, even if an extension was to be granted by the people of Zimbabwe, it will not benefit President Emmerson Mnangagwa. But if they want to amend that section that says it shall not benefit the incumbent, they have to go to another referendum. And in this particular referendum, it will be person specific to say, should President Mnangagwa be eligible or not? So those are the two safeguards, and those referendums must not be within 6 months of each other. So you have referendum number 1 to deal with the extension of term. Then you have referendum number 2 to allow a sitting president to benefit. So there are enough safeguards there. But there are also moral safeguards, you know. Other countries have limited terms of office. The United States, for example, and other countries, particularly in Africa, have limited terms of office, and they adhere to their terms of office. So President Mnangagwa, being a lawyer, being a person who, when he was being sworn, swore to uphold the Constitution, he has to respect the Constitution. He has to defend it, even if it means at his own inconvenience. And Africa has got a lot of examples where people tried to extend their terms of office. President Chiluba of Zambia, President Abdoulaye Wade of Senegal, both tried, to extend their terms of office, and the people refused. But there is yet another issue. President Emmerson Mnangagwa has been a minister, a key minister of government since 1980. And he held a lot of portfolios, a number of portfolios within the government of President Robert Mugabe. He then had to finish President Mugabe's term, and the people of Zimbabwe have given him 2 terms. He was part of the successes and the failures of the Zanu PF government, and more importantly, part of the failures of the Zanu PF government. There is nothing moral, there is nothing on merit that points to him deserving a 3rd term, even if it were possible. But also importantly is that our president celebrated, I think, his 82nd birthday today. He's 82. By the time he finishes his term, he'll be much, much older than that. By the time he starts the proposed 3rd term, he is well into his 90s. Zimbabwe is not short of clever people who can run, competent people who can run the affairs of the nation. So I still maintain that it is very difficult to amend this clause that deals with the term limits, and that Zimbabweans must reject that. I also go further to say that we are saddened, the MDC, that we are the only political party talking about this in the entire country. All other opposition parties are quiet about it, but more importantly is that there are parties who are in parliament, opposition party which is in parliament, their MPs are, they are supporting the 3rd term, because if the 3rd term is given, their MPs also benefit in the sense that their terms will be extended as well. Zimbabweans must reject this. Zimbabweans must speak with one voice on this, because not only does it cause our country to be a laughing stock, it confirms the status of Zimbabwe as a pariah state, and we don't need that. We are people with national pride. This is our country. We must never allow it to be a laughing stock. Those people who are asking for a 3rd term are either in the ruling party or are materially benefiting from their proximity with the president. And that is unfair and unjust. And therefore, Zimbabweans must reject this in total. Yeah, thank you very much. And may I take this opportunity to dispel some of the falsehoods that have been peddled on the social media about my attitude towards Malaba as extension.
Oh, yeah, please do so.
Yes, and I was the leader of the opposition in Parliament and specifically in the Senate. And I did speak about the extension of term of Justice Malaba on record. And it is there in the Hansard. I see a lot of people lie about that. I said I supported Malaba's extension of term. I did not. In fact, I was the person who spoke longest against the extension of term of Justice Malaba. And I just want to refer our audience here to the Hansard, which is the official record of Parliament. But the distinguishing feature between Malaba's issue and this case, at least from the point of view of the judiciary, is that the Malaba issue involved extension of the age of retirement of a chief justice or judges. In the case of the presidential issue, there is no retirement age. So the only limit that is there in the presidential term is the issue of the presidential term limit provided in Section 91 and Section 328. So there are two safeguards, two headlaws, legal headlaws that have to be passed, and those are the two referendums. Theoretically, it is possible, Gerard, that the people of Zimbabwe will vote yes in both referendums and give the president a third term. What we did as the constitution drafters was also to make sure that we made the Zimbabweans, the Zimbabwean people have a say in it. So in fact, we don't have two safeguards. We have three safeguards. The first safeguard is the referendum to extend the term. The second safeguard is the referendum to allow a sitting president to benefit from the extension. The third safeguards are the people of Zimbabwe, you and me. You and me have to reject it. You and me, for the first time, the people of Zimbabwe must listen to one another. We challenged, let's say I challenged, the delimitation. And people in the diaspora, the press, other opposition parties colluded to misunderstand purposely the nature of the challenge. They did not listen. They just mischaracterized it and said that was Mwonzora's ploy to delay the elections in order to benefit President Mnangagwa. They even went to say that I was afraid of the elections. Now here's an opportunity. Now that history has now shown how wrong everybody was and how right we were. Here is an opportunity for Zimbabweans to listen to one another and not to mischaracterize one another. And it is whether you are in Zanu PF, whether you are in Triple C, MDC, or any other political party, you must be conscientious Zimbabwe to fight against this evil that is coming. There are far-reaching consequences of allowing this to happen. One day, there will come another president who will then scrap term limits altogether. We have this one who wants a third term, but there may come another one, a demagogue, who will want unlimited terms of office. In my earlier life, I used to teach a subject called the history of Roman and Roman Dutch law. And within that subject at university, there is a subject of constitutional developments within the Roman Empire. And the Romans kept on changing their constitution in order to fit the conveniences of the time. And as a result, they had a monumental disaster. They ended up with a dictatorship that led to the collapse of their empire. We cannot have a Zimbabwe which is like that. Remember, Zimbabwe is under sanctions, and the most deadly sanctions are those imposed by ZIDERA, the Zimbabwe the Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act of the United States. And it has preconditions for lifting of those sanctions. And one of them is free and fair elections, democratic practice, good governance, and so on and so forth. I appeal to President Mnangagwa and the people in Zanu PF to just see sense. There is no need for this third term. So we have three safeguards: the two constitutional requirements of referendum, and the third one being the people of Zimbabwe. But because it is a constitutional amendment, the Speaker is obliged by the Constitution to give Zimbabweans 3 months' notice of the amendment, of the proposed amendment. And after those 3 months, there must be a public outreach to enlist the views of the people of Zimbabwe. This is well before the issues of the referendum. Again, if Zimbabweans work together, if there is enough advocacy, that is yet another safeguard.
Right. Thank you very much, for that. I want to go on to my last question because we need to open up, the space. I'll go to my last question and then I'm going to hand over to my co-host, Titus, to lead with, questions, that he might be having. I think, 1 or 2 questions, that he might be having. And then I'll open up, the space. Earlier on, I was having a conversation in another